Thank you, Program Director, Secretary General of the African National Congress, Comrade Fikile Mbalula, Comrade Emerson Mnangagwa, First Secretary of ZANU-PF and the President of Zimbabwe, Comrade Daniel Chapo, President of Frelimo and President of the Republic of Mozambique, Comrade Netumbo Nandi Ndaitwa, President of SWAPO and President of the Republic of Namibia, Comrade Mara Batista Kiosa, Deputy President of MPLA, Comrade Mizengo Kanyaza Pinda, Member of the Central Committee of Chama cha Mapinduzi and leader of the delegation from CCM, former President Thabo Mbeki, Secretaries General of the ANC, MPLA, SWAPO, Frelimo, ZANU-PF, and CCM, and leaders and representatives of our liberation movements, youth and women's leagues of our liberation movements, elders and veterans, invited leaders and representatives from fraternal parties, members of the diplomatic corps, delegates, and of course, members of the media. It is with a great deal of honor, revolutionary pride, and heartfelt gratitude that I greet you all on behalf of the African National Congress, the host of this summit, and the people of South Africa. The Liberation Movement Summit is more than a conference. It is what one would call a homecoming. It is a convocation of liberation movements rooted in shared histories of struggle bound by a tradition of resistance and united in a future that demands memory, imagination, boldness, and bravery. We are pleased that we are joined by fraternal organizations and parties from across the world who share the goals of liberation and freedom from oppression. Together, our movements were forged in the cauldrons of anti-apartheid and anti-colonial struggle. And today, together, we must be forged anew in the fire of a new struggle. The struggle for social and economic justice for our people, regional unity, integration, and sovereignty in an increasingly hostile global order. We gather this year on the 64th anniversary of the independence of Tanzania, the 50th anniversary of the independence of Angola and Mozambique, the 45th anniversary of the independence of Zimbabwe, and the 35th anniversary of the independence of Namibia. It is a moment not just for celebration, but it is also a moment for critical reflection. We must honor the memories of our founding giants, Julius Nyerere, Eduardo Mondlane, Samora Machel, Agostinho Neto, Sam Nujoma, Robert Mugabe, Joshua Nkomo, Kenneth Kaunda, Oliver Tambo, Nelson Mandela, and many others. Their vision, courage, boldness, bravery, as well as sacrifice, laid the foundations of a free Southern Africa that we live in today. We remember with deep reverence the recently departed Comrade Sam Noyoma and Comrade Hage Geingob of Namibia, stalwarts of SWAPO and lifelong warriors for justice, equality, and dignity. We also, here in South Africa, remember a recently departed David Dabede Mabuza, President of the Republic of South Africa and the African National Congress. We're also pleased that we have amongst us fraternal parties from across the world. This is what makes this summit so special, so impactful. We welcome the Communist Party of China, the Polisario Front from the Sahrawi Republic, Fatah from Palestine, the FLN of Algeria, United Russia, the BNF of Botswana, the Sandinistas of Nicaragua, and the PAC of Azania, as well as other continental organizations that are here represented, and other parties that I may not have mentioned. But more importantly, continental organizations like the Pan-African Women's Organization, party political schools that are here represented, youth, women, and veterans leagues of our various movements. Even as we remember our victories, we must confront a hard truth. Our liberation movements are under siege from within and without. Most of our movements are having to contend with declining electoral support, shifting demographics, frustrated young people in our various countries, economic inequality, and foreign interference. These trends speak to a deeper crisis, the disconnect between our founding narratives and the lived realities of a new generation of young people. It is a generation that sees and appreciates less of our past victories and more of our present shortcomings. It is a generation that demands jobs, justice, dignity, housing, education, health, and security, and sees our movements as distant, rigid, and slow to adapt. This disconnect amongst the population emboldens the external attacks on our sovereignty, our independence, our development, and security. In fact, there has been ample evidence that international actors use the legitimate grievances of our people to attack progressive governments. We have seen a revival of the forces of unilateralism, neocolonialism, and imperial extraction. There is a renewed offensive against transformation, progressive policies, and multilateralism, and a re-weaponization of global institutions, and a deliberate effort to divide and control Africa through transactional diplomacy and economic coercion. At the heart of this campaign lies a battle for control, not only of our politics through unbridled, persistent attempts for regime change. They also seek to lay claim to our critical and rare minerals they require for both green technology and digital economy and artificial intelligence. They are also in a battle for our data, our land, our people, and our future. This is a new scramble for Africa. But this time it is not only a scramble for territory, it is a scramble for digital, economic, ideological, and ecological scramble. For centuries, our continent has paid the price for rapid industrial development of the global north. Our people were enslaved and subjugated. Our land was occupied and our natural resources were stolen. Today, Africa is paying the environmental price for the prosperity of others. Although the African continent is not responsible for the warming of the planet, it is most vulnerable to its effect. That is neither just nor is it sustainable. Countries in the global north developed on the back of Africa's human capital, on the back of Africa's natural resources and cultural destruction. The price has been centuries of extraction, exploitation, and underdevelopment, whose effects are still felt up till today. As Walter Rodney argued in How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, Europe was developed by means of the same underdevelopment of Africa. To meet present-day challenges, we require urgent, substantial, and sustainable solutions to Africa's challenges. We need to find innovative ways of resolving our problems and challenges. The question we must answer is whether our movements are able to provide the leadership that is required in the world of today and tomorrow. The answer must lie in our ability to transform our movements, our governments, our economies, our societies, and our consciousness. We must recognize that our political independence is incomplete without economic justice. It is incomplete without resolving the question of land. It is incomplete unless we industrialize, we beneficiate the minerals that are extracted from our land, and we create jobs for our youth. As a region, we must replace the colonial extractive model with regional value chains, anchored in our resources, driven by our young people, and fueled by innovation. This means we must harness the transformative power of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area to advance regional and continental integration. Africa will never prosper for as long as we send all our raw materials abroad and rely on factories far from our shores for the finished goods and the advanced services that we use. Rather than export rock, sand, and soil, we should be exporting finished products that the world needs. We must process, build, and produce all that we need here on the African continent. This calls on us to invest in infrastructure that extends beyond national boundaries, to build a region that is both physically and economically integrated. As liberation movements from across Southern Africa, we are well placed to drive this important effort. We must acknowledge that many of the threats we face are internal. For many of us, corruption and patronage have contributed to various degrees to the destruction of our social fabric, to the weakening of the state, and to the disunity of our movements. The competition for public positions and resources has undermined our ability as liberation movements to adequately respond to the needs of the present moment that our people have. We need to be united in our efforts to rid our societies of corruption and crime, and we need to work together, drawing on each other's experiences, to rebuild and renew our movements. Our movements were built through the struggles of the young people of the time. Today, we must rebuild our movements the same way. The impatience of young people is not something that we should fear. It is to be welcomed because it signals the determination of new generations of citizens to strive for a better life, for a more just society. It is our responsibility as liberation movements to draw on that desire and that energy to undertake a new struggle with youth of our various countries at the forefront. Our youth leagues must not be ceremonial wings of our movements, but they must be engines. There must be engines of ideological clarity, economic innovation, digital activism, and organizational unity and renewal. We support the establishment of the Permanent Youth Secretariat and the Liberation Youth Development Fund, as well as the call for continental political education through our party schools, as well as youth exchanges and policy participation across our region. There can be no freedom without the liberation of women. The achievement of gender equality is a moral, social, and economic imperative. If women do not prosper, society does not prosper. If girls are unable to complete school, if women cannot find decent work or run their own businesses, if they do not receive equal pay for equal work, if they are vulnerable to violence and abuse, then our freedom will not be complete and our societies will remain forever poor. We welcome the comprehensive resolutions in this regard, including on land equity for women, reproductive rights, and the call to mainstream women in leadership, in trade, in learning, and in peace processes. We echo the call to center the Pan-African Women's Organization in our regional agenda and commit to elevating women's voices and leadership in every aspect of our movements, government, and the private sector. One of the most dangerous narratives today is the weaponization of migration. We must reject xenophobia in all its forms. Migration itself must not be seen as a threat. It is a consequence of underdevelopment, war, global inequality, not a moral failing of those who move in search of hope. As liberation movements, we must advocate for people-centered regional migration policies that affirm dignity, rights, and solidarity as well. We must never forget our freedom struggles were international in nature. Our freedom was achieved not only by the tireless struggles of our peoples, but by the efforts of people from across the world. Drawing on that experience, we reaffirm our support for the peoples of Palestine, Western Sahara, and Cuba. We condemn in the strongest terms the crimes against humanity and the genocide committed by the apartheid state of Israel against the people of Palestine. We are particularly horrified by the deliberate starvation of the people of Gaza. We call on the state of Israel to allow food and essential aid to be allowed in and to be distributed amongst the starving Palestinians. We call for an immediate end to the relentless bombardment of civilians and the destruction of their homes, their hospitals, their places of worship. We call on the world to stop the murder of children and babies through starvation. Our position remains very clear. Liberation is indivisible. We are not truly free until all are free. This summit should be a turning point on the important issues of principles that we hold dear. We must institutionalize mechanisms for mutual accountability amongst our movements. We must find and hold each other to higher standards, not only out of competition, but out of love, duty, and historical necessity. If we are not robust and frank in our self-criticism and introspection, we will not be able to renew and adapt to a rapidly changing balance of forces. We will not be able to ensure that our future survival is sustainable. Going forward, we must establish a framework for deeper inter-party collaboration across governance, socio-economic transformation, and ideological education as well. We should champion the vision of a multipolar, multicultural, equitable, inclusive, and a just world order. We should demand reform of the political and economic global governance institutions and the end of unilateral sanctions and the creation of a just global governance system rooted in dignity and in fairness. Working with like-minded forces across the world, we must be the architects of the new world order that we seek. History demands that we don't allow our legacies to be buried under the rubble of revolutionary nostalgia. We must ensure our relevance through bold action that we must take. We are the custodians of Africa's unfinished revolution. History requires that we become the builders of a new tomorrow. We should return to our countries, to our parties, to our people, with a clarity and unity of purpose, leading with courage, with integrity, and with humility. We should build an Africa where every woman, every man and child can live with dignity, thrive in peace, and realize the dreams for which so many have died. We need to reaffirm that there shall be peace and friendship, that there shall be houses and security and comfort for all, as set out in our Freedom Charter, adopted in 1955, 70 years ago, here in South Africa. Let us not only defend the gains of liberation, we should build on what we have achieved and we have achieved a great deal, even as our detractors seek to downplay the achievements that were brought about by our liberation movements. Let us realize the hopes and the aspirations of our people as we move together in unison as liberation movements, seeking to achieve the objectives that were set out by our forebears when they established our movement, to attain our independence and our freedom against apartheid and against colonialism. This is the hour and the moment that we need to regain our strength and move forward, renewed and reinvigorated, forever moving forward, as we all in unison say, Aluta continua. Amandla. Amandla. Thank you.